Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Have devotees joined? Are they on, Nasika?
Yes, Maharaj, there's about 23 devotees at the moment.
Okay, so maybe a few more will come. We'll just carry on with Kirtana.
Okay.
Sorry, very apologies for the late delay. It was circumstances beyond our control, but now they're under control. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirasesha Sanyari Pastachare Shatarine Namaste
Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha
Shunyavadi Pastachare Shatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Shri
Krishna
Krishna
Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare
Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama
Rama Rama Hare
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Hare
Hare
Hare.
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Rama Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gaur Premanandi, Jayam Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa, Parivrajagacharya Ashtotaya Sadashri Si Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai, Ananta Kota Vaishnavinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Shri Thakur Ki Jai, Prem Sikho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki.
Jai.
Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radhakunda Gita Govardhan ki.
Jai.
Shri Vrindavan Dham ki.
Jai.
Shri Mayapur Dham ki.
Jai.
Jagannath Puri Dham ki.
Jai.
Ganga Maya ki.
Jai.
Jamuna Maya ki.
Jai.
Tulasi Deva ki.
Jai.
Bhakti Deva ki.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki.
Jai.
Lord Chaitanya's Harinam Sankirtan ki.
Jai.
Brihat Madanga ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Sri Sri Gaurnitai ki.
Jai.
Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Grand all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nevasesha Shunyavari Pastachade Shatarine. Hare Krishna Vanchakar Paturbhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Om Gyanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurmaltam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakadamayam Dadati Shrapadantikam. Hare Krishna. Can some, how long have we got?
We can go.
Okay, it's not 40 minutes. No? Okay. So again, for those who've recently joined us, we had our facilitators had a little technical hitch with the Zoom entry this morning. So we're sorry we started rather late this morning, but we do not have, well, we can carry on, but we're not limited now by time. But let's see. Today with us is a Kadashi. I don't know if it's a Kadashi where you are, in the different parts of the world, many of you from Australasia. But here in Europe, today is Ekadashi, very auspicious day of Lord Hari, and a great day for hearing and chanting. And as we were discussing a couple of weeks ago, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we started the second verse, third verse of the Upadeshamrita. And we discussed Utsaha, the topic of enthusiasm, which is, say, the underlying principle of our progress in spiritual life in many ways, coupled with faith and enthusiasm, go hand in glove pretty much. As our faith grows, then naturally our enthusiasm, and enthusiasm helps to cultivate or to nurture faith. And as faith grows, enthusiasm grows to the point where it's 100%, as Prabhupada used the term, 100% complete awakening of our actual realization. But in the meantime, our enthusiasm may waver sometimes. It may be misdirected sometimes also. It may be covered over by, let's say, devious objectives or agendas. Maybe many different things. Maybe they're mixed in with it or interfering with the constant flow of enthusiasm, which is the ever-present nature of the spiritual world, this ever-increasing enthusiasm to bring pleasure to Krishna's senses. And in the material world, the general tendency is ever-increasing enthusiasm to try to bring pleasure to our senses, but we become depressed and disheartened and angry and so many different things because we do not achieve our goals, or somebody else is interfering with our endeavors, or whatever it may be, trying to deflate our enthusiasm. Now, similar things can happen on the path of devotional service. It's not all one way, you could say, because there are so many other side paths which we often get caught on and diminish the actual pure essential flow of enthusiasm to bring pleasure to Krishna's senses. So many things come along, whether it's chanting the holy name or in other kinds of services, which tend to, let's say, put salt into the sweet rice. And thus we don't get a real taste. And when we don't get a taste in something, it's a general thing, even material or spiritual. Enthusiasm is oftentimes based, at least in the conditioned state, on the results, on what we get, what we feel. Feeling good. I really feel good now. Therefore it must be good. If I feel good, it must be good. Well, in one sense, on the absolute platform, there may be truth in that, but that's not the motivation. I want to feel good. The motivation is I want Krishna to feel good. But in the material sense of the term, and in the neophyte stage of our devotional services, tendency is often there. I want to feel good. What makes me good must be good. I don't care what others say. It must be good because I feel good. Definitely in the material sense of the term, people work hard sometimes because there's an anticipation, a hope that they're going to get what they need. If you work hard in a job, you expect to get money, and that money you hope is going to bring about pleasure, sense gratification. So there's a motivation there. It's not completely normal or constitutional. There's a motivation there to achieve some sense gratification of some kind. In the case, sometimes it's being recognized, being praised, or obtaining some objects of one's senses that one desires or one finds pleasure. Or maybe it's to meet somebody who one's very attached to, or a place which we feel comfortable, or whatever. But some motivation is there, some temporary motivation. Because it's Dukkhalayam Shashvatam, it's temporary. It's not only temporary, but it's unpredictable. You may get some relief, you may get some kind of excitement, but it is short-term, it doesn't last. And sometimes it doesn't even happen at all. It's a very great disappointment, big disappointment, equal. The world of duality is balanced. There's an equal balance on both sides, up and down. But the general underlying principle of material world is suffering, fear, suffering, anxiety, and so on like that, due to one's ignorance of what really is in one's self-interest. So the enthusiasm which we're discussing in the nectar of instruction, Upadeshamrita, is not to lead us in that direction. And most processes are to try to fulfill or to sustain that enthusiasm for a temporary goal. And usually it's aimed at a higher goal, which tends to last longer. In other words, heavenly delights or something like that, or a more mode of goodness lifestyle, etc. But that's not the objective of Upadeshamrita. The objective of Upadeshamrita is not even just to become released of all the causes of suffering. That may be one of the byproducts, but it's not the objective goal. The impersonalist may aspire for just to become relieved of all kinds of duality and anxiety and suffering which we experience in this material world. But that's not the goal of Upadeshamrita. The goal of Upadeshamrita, although it may start off with no's and do's and don'ts, etc., the ultimate goal of nectar of instruction is to enter or to awaken our constitutional nature. And that's where the last few verses of nectar of instruction deal with residing in Radhakunda, etc. It means having gone through the step-by-step course of nectar of instruction, one can become eligible to actually, it's not like now you get a visa back to Godhead. It's probably said this awakens on its own in due course of time. It's a natural awakening. It's not something imposed on a sleeping soul. As we awaken from our sleeping condition, then the consciousness of Radhakunda, the consciousness of Vaikuntha, and then on to Vrindavan and so on and so forth, depending on our own will, our own nature, will reveal itself. Self-realization, something which is realized with transcendental senses. So our senses right now are covered with, by our own doing, by the modes of material nature, or we could say varieties of karmic colorings. They're called, anyway, I've forgotten the term, but varieties of karmic coverings which cover our consciousness and cause us to perceive the world in various ways, accepting and rejecting and so on and so forth. And as long as that's still, say, a coat which we're wearing on our path of devotional service, then devotional service, although we may have some faith, we have maybe some aspirations, whatever, some taste maybe there also to certain aspects, but it will be flickering or it will be intermittent or whatever. It won't be constant. Devotional service is supposed to be hoitikia patiyata. It's supposed to be without motivation, without interruption. So we may not be on that platform, or hoitikia patiyata, but the process of coming to that platform, well, that very verse itself, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that topmost religious process, which is hoitiki, which is without motivation, without interruption, is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. In that very chapter, after that particular verse, description is then given how to come to that platform of Savaipung Samparo Dhammo, topmost religious practice, which is loving devotional service for the personality of Godhead, which has to be unmotivated and uninterrupted in order to completely satisfy the self. And basically speaking, it's founded upon the science of association and how we associate. It's not, as Prabhupada says and said in the purport, this is not just some armchair philosophy. Devotional service is practical executional action, utilizing our senses appropriately in such a way as to wake up. Rishikena Rishikesha Bhakti Seva Uchate, to try to awaken our dormant affection for Krishna. And that comes about by associating with somebody who isn't just trying to awaken their dormant affection for Krishna, but actually has affection for Krishna. By associating with those who have, you could say, a little bit more advanced than we are, that's also good. But ultimately, one has to have the association of one who is completely mad or in love with Krishna, has complete affection for Krishna. At least one has to follow their direction if we want to reach that goal. If we want to get anywhere in this world, we have to follow the direction of someone who knows, someone who really knows. It's easy to get lost on the path. If somebody has heard something about the goal, but they themselves still have, other kind of, plans on the way, and we follow them, and the tendency which will also get going down a few, cul-de-sacs or dead ends on our path of spiritual life. So we have to, that may happen sometimes. We have our ups and downs, we have our losses. Sometimes we become a bit unenthusiastic because somebody insulted us, or we didn't get the results we wanted, or something or another happened. We just woke up in a bad mood, or something or another. We don't feel so enthusiastic in going forward in our devotional service. Especially when the chips are down, as they say sometimes. When the chips are down means that things aren't going well. Seems everything's against us. Oh, I can't carry on. But we need association, definitely in those times. But ultimately, we need the pure association, which can keep us on the straight and narrow path, so to speak, on the path of pure bhakti. And that requires the association of the pure bhakta. So we're different ways of associating with the pure bhakta. Physical association is one thing, but that's not the general way. Even to understand or to realize the vapu, our acharyas generally say, one has to worship the vani. Worship of the vani is not something you put on a pedestal and offer arti to or something. It actually means taking on the instructions of the spiritual master as one's life and soul. Just like Prabhupada said, he made his spiritual master's instructions his life and soul, and that was a secret of success. He didn't change the instructions. He took the instructions according to time and circumstance and presented them in a way which could be digested. So this principle of making the spiritual master's instructions one's life and soul is, literally speaking, worshipping the spiritual master in the form of vani. And it's through vani that we can realize vapu. It can be, the vapu itself must include vani, and it usually does. But it's vani which helps us to really realize, to get realization of our identity, realization of the spiritual master, realization of Krishna, etc., etc. When we genuinely dedicate ourselves to the vani. So by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, we have volumes of Vani, volumes of instructions, Siksha, to follow. So that Siksha and this very nectar of instruction is called Upadeshamrita, a nectarian instruction. The nectar of instruction, Upadesh is also like instructions of the spiritual master. So we're very fortunate to have this opportunity. And today we'll carry on with the third verse, of the nectar of instruction. So I don't know if Janananda Prabhu can put the third verse on our screen. He's now screen sharing. Here it is. And we can chant together this verse if you so desire. You please join with us and chant along. I think it's Janananda has to put on full screen. I don't know if it's he or I, somebody does. I don't think it's me. Maybe I didn't. Anyway, it's okay. We can read it. Okay, all together. Utsahan nishchayat daryat tat karma pravartanat sangatyagat satovite shadbir bhakti prasidyati. Utsahan nishchayat daryat tat karma pravartanat sangatyagat satovite shadbir bhakti prasidyati. Nice verse. These early verses in the Nectar of Instruction give us very important, something going on here. They give us very important foundational clues to how we can progress in our spiritual life. And this today is the positive one. We had the don'ts last time, Tyahara Priyasascha, Prajapanyam Magarha, and so on. And now we're having the positive ones. The negative ones, by the way, you can't have the positive ones and the negative ones simultaneously. Not in devotional service. You can be utsaha, for instance, for prajalpa. Yeah, you can be enthusiastic, but that's not devotional service. You can be enthusiastic to overeat, but yes, Prabhu, I'm utsaha, I'm also, but you're also, atyahara. The both have to be taken into account. It doesn't mean I'm following both. I'm overeating, and I'm very enthusiastic about overeating, for instance. Very enthusiastic not to follow the regulated principles. Very enthusiastic to criticize others. This is not devotional service. It's what did we say? Misdirected enthusiasm, or being very patient to obtain, some material goals, etc. This is not the principle. Principle is we have to take the first verse into account, and realize that these activities will impede our spiritual growth. And it's not possible to be genuinely enthusiastic if we're still indulging in these things. It's like in the Bible, Matthew, describes how you can't serve Mammon and God simultaneously. Not possible to do both. It's contradictory. One puts out the other. It's like Prabhupada gives the example, like trying to light a fire and pouring paraffin on the fire at the same time. It doesn't have the effect of extinguishing the fire. So if you want to extinguish the fire, the blazing fire of material existence, as we sing in the morning, Samsara Dava Nalalita Loka, the spiritual master extinguishes this blazing fire of material existence. Just a rain cloud pours water on a forest fire. And how he does that is through his instructions. It's not some kind of magic wand. He gives instructions, and the more we apply it, it's like, it's just like that. It's like extinguishing the forest fire. It may be a little painful. It may not be so pleasing at certain stages, but this is the process to extinguish that blazing fire of material existence, of lust within our heart. Lust for this, that, and the other. Extinguished when we apply our mind, intelligence, everything, in the service of the spiritual master. And this is a secret. So it's so let's go to the word for word. There, utsaha, enthusiasm. Okay, we won't do them all because we'll do that next time. Utsaha, enthusiasm. Nice word to remember. Try to learn these verses in your spare time. These first, especially the first 4 verses of the Nectar of Instruction. Especially if we're doing Bhakti Shastra, you generally have to know these first 4 verses. Let's go to the translation, please. There are 6 principles favorable in the execution of pure devotional service. The word is there, pure. Although here in the verse, only bhakti is mentioned, and sometimes, most times, we include bhakti, all the preliminary stages of bhakti, even the neophyte stages of bhakti, the mixed stages of bhakti, etc., are generally included within the broad category of devotional service. And devotees are pure devotees are very broad-minded, so they try to encompass everything and everybody who's engaged in some form of devotional service under the umbrella of devotional service. But here Prabhupada uses favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. And that's what one of our aims. I mean, it's our aim. It is the aim, but it's not the entire thing, pure devotional service. There are many other aspects which we're aiming at. I mean, bringing pleasure to Krishna, all included, you could say. But sometimes we think it's just a mechanical execution. It's not. Pure devotional service, you could say, if it's devoid of these various, or without the offenses, it's without, the 6 unfavorables and so on, we might say, well, that's pure devotional service. I'm very enthusiastic, but it may not be. It may still be with a mentality of pride or whatever it may be, or impersonalistic in a sense. Pure devotional service has to be favorable for the anya vilasitachingam jnana karmajanavitam anukulena has to anukulena, favorable, anukulena Krishna, pleasing to Krishna. So these principles help us to cultivate this pure devotional service. These are aids on our path, you could say, being enthusiastic, number 1. And in most cases, Prabhupada says this is the most important characteristic, practically speaking, being enthusiastic. Now, I don't know if I still got it on my page. Maybe I have. Let me see. Okay, I'll just read one thing. We did read some nice comments of Prabhupada last week, and I can't remember exactly which one we read. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. I can't exactly remember. Let's see. What should we read? Here we go. I'll just read the final one because I'll forget it otherwise. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada in 1972 to those in Calcutta. If there is any slip in enthusiasm, then how things will go on. I have seen in Bombay everything is deteriorating simply because this enthusiasm is lacking. Enthusiasm and patience, these things are required first. As this Prabhupada is writing this letter before he introduced this Upadeshamrita to the movement. Upadeshamrita wasn't really introduced till 75. So at that time, Prabhupada is just writing letters and quoting sometimes from Upadeshamrita, but basically it wasn't something which was available for devotees until 75. But if we are not able to maintain, how we shall further expand? There must be regularly classes and reading books, chanting 16 rounds, going for kirtan, like that. This is our program for enthusiasm. If you do not follow it, what can I do? So we're looking at the positive things. We could look at things which are negative, which we touched on just now, which may diminish our enthusiasm. And there are things which may increase our enthusiasm. By regulation, and this is in the Srimad Bhagavatam, same thing we mentioned, Nasta Pareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seva. We want to come to this platform of constant enthusiasm and regularly attending classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, rendering service, Regularly attending classes includes, actually it's hearing and chanting. Reading books, Prabhupada said specific, he's giving like specific here. Reading the books. This is an extremely important part of our devotional lives, which sometimes is like at the end of our necessity list and oftentimes gets left for next time, if at all. But reading books means, what does it mean? Not only is it sharpening our intelligence, not only may it be clearing up doubts, not only may it be enthusing, and you, of course, essential if you want to preach, but it means that we're associating with a pure devotee of the Lord. And it's by the association of a pure devotee, which is the secret of success, basically speaking, on our path of bhakti, our path of devotional service. So reading Prabhupada's books means we're associating with Prabhupada. That's how we associate. Prabhupada wrote in one letter, one devotee said, Srila Prabhupada, I'm alone, and la la la, and I have no association. Prabhupada said, you read my books, you become the association. And this is, what to say, it's a very important thing to maintain enthusiasm. This is our program for enthusiasm, Prabhupada said, and chanting 16 rounds. We heard last week how Prabhupada was saying that generally speaking, lack of enthusiasm means we're not being very attentive in our hearing and chanting. We're not taking it seriously. And thus what happens, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when we're not attentive in our hearing and chanting, is what happens is the anarthas come up. The seeds of anartha are in our hearts. They're in our hearts. And they'll grow. If we give them half a chance, Maya will come in. And attentive hearing and chanting, or seriously trying to hear and chant. And in the association of devotees, good timing, and so on and so forth, is very important, especially for neophytes. It's very essential to try to guard us against being overwhelmed with anartha and consequent offenses. He said, Bhaktivinoda says, sows the seeds of anartha. And he also said that inattentive chanting when hearing is the cause. Awakens or causes the other offenses in chanting the holy names. So we've taken this a little seriously too. Even the mechanical chanting and completion of 16 rounds, of course, is amazing. It's wonderful. But if we really want to go deep, then we have to go deep. You can't get the jewels under the ground just by scratching the surface. We're in the right place. We want to go deep, so we want to dig deeper. There are different factors which help us dig deeper, especially, the confidence which we need in the association of devotees, the holy dawns, prayer, and so on and so forth, which can help us go deeper in our spiritual lives. And Prabhupada says, going for kirtan. Another place, I don't know if I got it. I think I did. Just give me a second. I think it's in Bhakti Aloka, one book of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. I may be wrong. Let's have a quick look here. Oh, I don't know if it is. Anyway, I'm just going to read something now from Bhakti Aloka. It's a book which I'm not saying you should read, but it is a corollary to these verses from the Nectar of Instruction. As we said earlier on, we heard, as long as we have these material desires, these anarthas, then enthusiasm for devotional service is not going to awaken. There may appear to be reflection of enthusiasm in as much as we fulfill our motivations or our material desires, but it's not pure devotion. In proportion, he says, to the degree that we discuss spiritual topics in devotion, freedom from material associations awakened as an extraneous fruit is one of the byproducts. The more we can absorb ourselves in kirtan, hearing and chanting, then we may wonder, how on earth am I going to get rid of these other desires? Well, we cannot get rid of these other desires on our own. It's not possible. It's only by the mercy of Krishna. The mercy of Krishna, Prabhupada said, the mercy of Krishna is already there. You just have to take it. So what is that mercy? Is it some kind of imperceptible kind of wave in the air? No, it's not. It's simply the opportunity to apply our intelligence, our mind, our senses to hearing and chanting and serving Krishna. That's all. It's not so esoteric. It's quite straightforward. simply associating with Krishna in the form of hearing and chanting about him. And then as an extraneous, without any need to make any other, we bash our heads, we say, oh, so many problems. But the problem is, as long as we're not associating, as long as we're not hearing and chanting, the problems will never go away. Never. It may be a different problem, but there will always be problems because we're forgetting Krishna. And the medicine is to hear Bhavoshiti Chotamanobi Ramat Gutama Shloka Gunam Vadat. The medicine is to hear and chant about Krishna. That is the medicine. Generally, we're not enthusiastic about medicine. Huh? You don't usually find people, I want that now. Maybe they're enthusiastic about the vaccine for the coronavirus because naturally people are afraid. There is a certain degree of people, perhaps most people, who are enthusiastic to get the inoculation vaccine, hopeful because they have a hope that this will protect us from danger. But in general, we're not enthusiastic about taking medicine, especially kids. The medicine doesn't taste nice. And it usually includes a bit of restriction to a bit of yama, a bit of, giving up things. You can't go out, you can't do this, you can't eat this, different things, it's not something we really like. But, we have to do these things sometimes. But in this case, Bhaktivinoda says it's extraneous. It's as we just heard just now, that devotional service is not only, it's actually pleasing to the heart. It's that nice verse. It's very joyful and everlasting. It's very pleasing. It's very pleasing to hear about Krishna. We just, as we hear, because we've got a little bit of a jaundiced like tongue, the taste of sugar candy is not very nice. But sugar candy is good for people who've got jaundice. It's good for them. But and what is the cure? We take the sugar candy. It may not taste like sugar candy in the beginning because we got jaundice like tongue. But if we continue to take it, the tongue will become healed, or our health will become, we will get our health back. And we'll have a good taste for the sugar candy. We'll have a good taste for hearing and chanting, especially in the association of those who know how to deliver it in a way which is not so bad. It's more digestible, we could say. It's very pleasing. Well, Lord Chaitanya has made it really pleasing through kirtan. There aren't many people who don't like kirtan, even non-practitioners. Non-practitioners, oftentimes, they really like kirtan. Many people, they say, this is so good, you're bringing so much joy to the place, or whatever it is, And they may not know what the purpose is, nothing. But they appreciate it as bringing even to them, some happiness. Lord Chaitanya has given this Ananda Buddhivara, this blissful process of kirtan. And Prabhupada said, we have to attend kirtan as our life and soul. As our life and soul. Let's see what this one says. Attachment. For these various attachments which keep us from let's say, genuine, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Bhogaishvara prasaktanam teyapavita chetasam. If we want that real determination, that continual enthusiasm, not just up and down one, continual enthusiasm, Bhogaishvara prasaktanam teyapavita chetasam. Krishna says to Arjuna that those who are too attached to Bhoga Aishvarya, the resolute determination for devotional service will not take place. And we all know how resolute we need to be sometimes. And we don't always maintain it, but that's what we should be aiming at. Let's see, those who want to enjoy the results of material activity with ardent affection are called attached. We got so much affection, we want to enjoy our families, we want to enjoy our whatever, where we are, the material facilities we have. We want to enjoy being recognized. We want to enjoy so many material, subtle and gross things. And this means that we're attached to this world. And it has to, if we want to go back to Godhead, we can't be attached to this world. Those who neglect the results of karma but accept only what is favorable to devotional service are called unattached. They may come, we may say it's a result of our karma, but we're not attached to it. We're not accepting it as being, mind for my enjoyment, but rather we see it as an object for Krishna's pleasure, utilize it in Krishna's service. They're called unattached. And ashri karma palam karyam karma karoti sasanyansi yogicha naniragnenda chakrya. They work enthusiastically, although they are unattached to material activity, because usually in the material world, attachment to something, to a girl or a boy, a country, a football team, a musician, whatever it is, an opportunity to make money, a nice car, whatever, may be our liking, and it usually awakens enthusiasm within us. When we see something or we have a chance to be with somebody who we really want. Usually our enthusiasm starts to grow in leaps and bounds. But here we see that one who's unattached to the material world is indifferent in a sense, although not indifferent in one sense, but he sees it as Krishna's energy to be used in Krishna's service. Such a person, normally speaking, what is there to be enthusiastic about? You're not attached to anything in this world. There's nothing. But one who knows to whom everything belongs, that everything is Krishna's energy, is very enthusiastic to utilize everything in Krishna's service. Very enthusiastic to bring pleasure to Krishna. That's one of the important things on our path of devotion, is to hear about the glories of Krishna. Just imagine a person who, if you had, in the case of a girl, the most handsome man in the world is your boyfriend. The most famous man in the world is your boyfriend. The most knowledgeable man in the world is your boyfriend. The most powerful man is your boyfriend. Maybe not the most detached man, but at least the other five. What's the other one? Most opulent, the richest man in the world is your boyfriend. Feel pretty enthusiastic to keep him, in general, because there are other factors involved. But at least as an initial starting point, you'd be pretty enthusiastic to keep him as your boyfriend. Everybody's like, "Wow, you're so lucky! You've got the most handsome man on the planet." Or if it's a girl, the most beautiful girl, whatever it is, the richest guy. There's so much competition for these type of people is very strong. Maybe not the other one, the renounced. They're very rare to find that someone's very attached to that one in the material world. But similarly, what to say, if we could only hear about Krishna and realize that Krishna is the most beautiful, he's the most famous, he's the most strong, the wealthy, you go on, he's the most everything. There's no one more attractive. That's what Krishna means, all attractive. No one is more attractive than Krishna. He's the most attractive. I say all attractive, but he's the most also. Most attractive. And so why we shouldn't be enthusiastic? He's the most kind. He's the most loving. He's the most everything. Everything, you name it. He's the most. You could say the most nasty or something. No, positively speaking, he's the most nasty. And all this is a perception of our consciousness due to the fact that our consciousness is covered by various degrees of lust, greed, and anger, etc. And we see things through that light. But in the reality, Krishna is everything about him is attractive, everything. And for those who don't like him and see him like that, they come into this material world. And here we see Krishna as nasty. We don't like God. We don't like this. We don't like that. Why is he telling us to restrict our senses? We don't like it. I don't like him. Was one of our volunteers the other day. I said, what do you find nice about being here? In New Marple in France. They said, and what do you find could be improved? Too many rules and regulations. I don't like all these rules and regulations you have. This is natural for those who are conditioned. We don't like it. Children don't like it. But still, never mind. Carry on taking the gulabs. What to do? Let's go on. It is useless trying to independently destroy ignorance and lust in the heart. In fact, even though it says it's a useless endeavor to try independently to destroy lust and greed and ignorance in the heart. Ignorance, lust, fruit of activities, all doubts and material bondage. These are the very things which interfere really with our enthusiasm in devotional life. And they can, and material bondage are destroyed by the mercy of the Lord. as we sometimes hear, demons in Vrindavana. Krishna kills the demons. In Krishna Lila, all the various demons, they represent various anarthas killed by Krishna, some by Balaram. They have to be killed. They're killed by, this is Krishna's mercy, and we tap that mercy by various means, and one of them is to hear and chant about Krishna. Hear the pastimes of Krishna, chant and hear the holy names together. They are destroyed by the mercy of the Lord in the course of cultivating Anushilanam. Krishna Anushilanam, cultivation. Shila means cultivate. Cultivating devotional service. They're gradually destroyed. We have to cultivate it. When we cultivate some plants, we also have to be careful, of the weeds that grow alongside them. We have to be careful to remove the weeds, not just cultivate the plant. Both have to be there. So these two verses are like cultivation and also removal of weeds. We should not lose enthusiasm because we have no strength to destroy the reactions of karma. We don't have the strength to destroy those reactions. We get angry sometimes when they keep taking over. We don't have that strength. In the very beginning of devotional service, the sadhaka must have faith with full enthusiasm. That sounds easier. It doesn't sound easy. It sounds a bit, almost like we have to have firm faith, shraddha, in the beginning, but that may not be the case. It may only be a little bit. But by associating with those devotees who have strong faith, then it can grow. We have to have a certain amount of faith, otherwise we're not going to go forward in that one either. And enthusiasm may be a bit tempered with some material returns in the beginning, but because we're serving a devotee who's free from all vice, who doesn't have any material motivation, therefore gradually, if we continue to serve them, then the various, obstacles on our path will gradually be removed by the mercy of Krishna. Let's see. We'll go on through. The word Shraddha certainly means faith. But enthusiasm is the life of Shraddha, the life of faith. It's the very life of it. It's like blood, but if blood doesn't have any movement, it's not going to do much use in our body. It just sits there. It's got to be constantly moving. So similarly, we may have some faith, but we don't just sit down with our faith and in our armchairs, as Prabhupada said. No, we have practical execution of devotional service. There's be enthusiasm there in the practical execution. Due to lack, many people think that they have faith in God, but because they have no enthusiasm, their faith has no meaning. Using the word enthusiasm here, as Prabhupada said, engaging our senses or action with intelligence is not just action, but with proper intelligence. And that means in that which is favorable for the awakening of our Krishna consciousness. Therefore, due to a lack of sadhu sangha, they do not perform devotional service. And so I didn't find that quote on kirtan there, but somewhere I was reading, maybe this morning or last night, Prabhupada was saying that those who do not attend the kirtan will never be able to progress in spiritual life. Attendance of kirtan is essential if we want to progress. Otherwise, we tend to become hung up with, impure attachments. We tend to become speculative in understanding how we can progress in spiritual life. We're not so advanced. Between other peace and Nichena, in this Kali Yuga, who is so advanced through daily worship or any other process that we think that we can, attain pure devotional service? It's possible. If the spiritual master orders like that, then it can be done. But as a general principle, kirtan is the method in this age of Kali, whereby we can attain pure devotion. And enthusiasm in our kirtan, enthusiasm in our service, and so on and so forth is absolutely essential. Otherwise, because enthusiasm will destroy the other motivations, what people are thinking of me. I don't feel good. I don't like the way they're singing, or whatever it may be. Or look at those nice those nice girls over there, those nice boys, whatever may come up. For those young ones, particularly in the kirtan, we've got to be enthusiastic, and enthusiasm It's not just an execution of show. Enthusiasm means that we're really absorbing ourselves in the sound of the holy name. It's a very simple process. This is the meaning in one sense of Trinadapi Sinichina Toropi Hishnana. We have no hope of any other means. It's humility. I don't have the eligibility to attain perfection other than by the mercy of Krishna. Therefore, let me take shelter of Krishna by hearing his holy name, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As the autumnal rains clear up the muddy pools from the monsoon season, the sound of Krishna's name, when we're enthusiastic to hear and chant, that sound will clear up the muddy pools of anartha within our hearts. All the doubts, etc., can be cleaned up within our hearts. So anyway, we haven't really touched on some of the points we were going to touch on today either. I will mention one more thing before we go on. I've got quite a few things I wanted to share today, but maybe next week. I don't think last week we discussed the pastime of Gajendra the elephant. Did we discuss it last time? Do you remember? I don't think we did. I think I said we leave it till next time. I may be wrong. Anyway, even if we did, it's nice to hear it again. You get it from Srimad Bhagavatam. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that very important in the 8th canto, Gajendra Moksha pastime, this very famous pastime of the deliverance of Gajendra from the crocodile. And there's a very significant, principle in this pastime of not just taking shelter of the Lord, but there are other factors which we should understand. And in the verse, it's 8-30, if you want to look it up, 8-30. Thereafter, because of being pulled into the water and fighting for many long years, the elephant became diminished in his mental, physical, and sensual strength. The crocodile, on the contrary, being an animal of the water, increased in enthusiasm, physical strength, and sensual power. So in one situation, we find the elephant was strong. In another situation, the crocodile was stronger. In the fighting, I'm going to read all the purport for our purification. In the fighting between the elephant and the crocodile, the difference was that although the elephant was extremely powerful, he was in a foreign place in the water. During 1,000 years of fighting, my goodness, imagine how determined we have to be. Even on Sankirtan, sometimes it's so tough. And Prabhupada said, in his own words, he said, if people are not interested in one place, go somewhere else. We don't have to just battle against the odds for the sake of it. If you have no choice, what to do? But if there's a choice, why not make a choice? During 1,000 years of fighting, he could not get any food. And under the circumstances, his bodily strength diminished. That's a factor. In the neophyte stage, we have to have proper food. The army marches on its stomach, they say. It's good prasadam, otherwise we won't be enthusiastic. Good rest, we won't be enthusiastic. He couldn't get any food, and he was getting weak. Because his bodily strength diminished, his mind also became weak, and his senses less powerful. This is what happens. We start thinking of other things, and we don't even have the stamina to carry on. The crocodile, however, being an animal of the water, had no difficulty. He was getting food and was therefore getting mental strength and sensual encouragement. He was at home. And we all know that when you're playing a sport on one's home ground, the home supporters, etc., usually you are in a better position than the opponents. You've got a lot of support. Thus, while the elephant became reduced in strength, the crocodile became more and more powerful. Now, from this, Prabhupada says, we may take the lesson that in our fight with Maya, we should not be in a position in which our strength, enthusiasm, and senses will be unable to fight vigorously. Our Krishna conscious movement has actually declared war against the illusory energy. We haven't declared war against anyone per se in this world. Everyone's Krishna's parcel, everything is Krishna's energy. But the illusory energy, against the Maya. Maya meaning not the personality Maya, but the effects of Maya, or let's say our absorption in Maya, this illusory understanding of untruth. We declared war against untruth, we could say, in which all the living entities are rotting in a false understanding of civilization. The soldiers in this Krishna consciousness movement must always possess physical strength, enthusiasm, and sensual power. Interesting statement. The soldiers, and of course we say, oh, what's the problem mean? A soldier? There aren't many soldiers in our movement. Every one of us is meant to be a soldier in Lord Chaitanya's, if we want to say, army, his movement, whatever you want to call it. We're all like soldiers. And must always possess physical strength. In other words, Prabhupada said, it's important to keep our health together, but not to become infatuated with it. Some people become, their whole life is based around it. You generally find those persons are always sick. Usually people who take, for instance, tons of medicine are usually people who are sick. There's no need to take tons of medicine. There's other ways of dealing with it, maybe if you're really sick, but otherwise a good lifestyle, good healthy lifestyle, exercises, breathing, different things which we're supposed to do and we don't do very often in our modern societies. We sit behind computers with our back bent in half all day long and hardly walk, just jump in our car and go to the nearby, It won't be long before we'll have a kind of a mechanical method to go from that chair to the toilet and back. I wouldn't be surprised if they haven't already got these type of things. Toothbrushes, electric this, electric that. To guarantee that we have to buy all the pharmaceutical products to keep the pharmaceutical business going nice and strong. We don't do things which like work with our hands, dig the garden and things like that. Now we get someone else to do it and pay them. So these are sort of things we should do to keep our health together, both mentally and physically. And otherwise you end up taking all kinds of, nasty medicines or whatever it is to keep yourself from, collapsing, help you to sleep or whatever it is. Because we don't live a very natural life. But, it's important to keep our physical strength. We must always possess physical strength. And that requires, good eating, exercise, proper rest, and environmental situation which is favorable, etc. Enthusiasm, which we've been discussing, is essential that the devotees have to be enthusiastic, or it's not going to spread this movement. Neither are we going to get out of Maya. And sensual power. If we don't have sensual power, how are we going to engage in service? It's similar to physical strength, you could say. But it includes the mind. The senses do include the mind and the various senses we have. Whatever we've got to utilize it in Krishna service. To keep themselves fit, they must therefore place themselves. Now, this is another, you could say, taking another angle, but is a very important one. Therefore, they must place themselves in a normal condition of life. Normal condition of life. Now, we're going to ask, what is a normal condition of life? We probably don't know what it is these days. What constitutes a normal condition will not be the same for everyone. Very important point Prabhupada's mentioned. Square pins do not fit very well in round holes. Every single living entity is different. Every living entity reacts differently to the same circumstance. It may be great for us and we think everyone else should do the same thing, but they may not be the same. There may be, maybe not, principles which are similar, and certain aspects of it will have the same result. But we can't make it that everyone is going to react exactly the same way. We're talking here in terms, you could say, of situations within this material world. Even in the spiritual world, different living entities are attracted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in different ways. There are no two living entities absolutely alike, even on the spiritual platform. And therefore, there are divisions. Now we're looking at the material world. There are divisions of Varnashram. Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Especially in this age, Kali Yuga, it's advised that no one takes sannyas. Oh, what happened there? I didn't press in the right button. We're back. Give me a second to get back where we were. Here we are. And it's quoting a verse, actually it's originally from the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. Ashramedam Gavalambam Sanyasam Palapaitrikam Devarena Satotpating Kalo Pancha Vivajayat. From this we can understand that in this age, this Kali Yuga, the sannyasa ashram is forbidden because people are not strong. when we say, strong senses have to be strong, that means in the real sense of devotional service, they're not being drawn away to all the sense objects. Weak senses, weak-minded, we hear this term. They're easily captivated by objects of the senses. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed us an example in taking sannyas at the age of 24. But even Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya advised Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to be extremely careful because he had taken sannyas at an early age. For preaching, we give young boys sannyas, but actually it is being experienced that they are not fit for sannyas. Prabhupada said a funny thing one time. He was with 3 of his disciples. 2 of them were sannyasis, and the other one was asking to take sannyas. And they all happened to have very big bodies, rather, large bellies and big bodies, all of them. And Prabhupada said to the 3rd one who was asking for sannyas, he said, "You are fat enough, but you're not fit enough." Referring to the 2 rather large sannyasis who were in the room at the same time. But you're not fit enough. There is no harm, however, if one thinks that he is unfit for sannyas. If he is very much agitated sexually, he should go to the ashram where sex is allowed, namely the Grihastha ashram. Just see how Prabhupada is so, you could say, encouraging, so merciful. Referring to disciples who are taking sannyas at a young age, there is no harm. He should go to the ashram where sex is allowed. That one has been found to be very weak in one place does not mean that he should stop fighting the crocodile of Maya. We sometimes give up. The Prabhupada said, one should take shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna, as we shall see Gajendra do. And at the same time, one can be a grihastha if he is satisfied with sexual indulgence. There is no need to give up the fight. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore recommended stani stita shrutikatam tanuvan manobihi. There's a famous verse from the prayers of Lord Brahma. Gyane payasam utapasya namanta eva jivanti sat pukalitamba vidya vartam stane stita shrutikatam tanuvan manobir ye prayasa jitajito sitais pilokyam. The key verse, you could say, in the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Roy was this verse spoken by Lord Brahma. He says, "My dear Lord, those devotees who have thrown away the impersonal conception of the absolute truth and have therefore abandoned discussing empiric philosophical truths should hear from self-realized devotees about your holy name, form, pastimes, and qualities. They should completely follow the principles of devotional service and remain free from illicit sex, illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and animal slaughter. Surrendering themselves fully with body, words, and mind, they can live in any ashram or social status. Indeed, you are conquered by such persons, although you are always unconquerable." I see you've got something on the screen here. Okay, I don't think you had that verse. I'm not sure. One may stay in whichever ashram is suitable for him. It is not essential that one take sannyas. If one is sexually agitated, he can enter Grihastha ashram, but one must continue fighting. For one who is not in a transcendental position to take sannyas artificially is not a very great credit. If sannyas is not suitable, one may enter the Grihastha ashram and fight Maya with great strength, but one should not give up the fighting and go away. So to fight, we definitely have to have enthusiasm, whatever the cause may be. So some other enthusiasm in devotional service must be developed, cultivated, maintained, etc. It's sahan. And this is basically the most important principle. Without enthusiasm, Prabhupada says we cannot advance in Krishna consciousness. It's very, very important. Positive principle to associate with those who are enthusiastic, to hear and chant about Krishna, to try to follow the principles to avoid various activities which would destroy enthusiasm in chanting, pray for enthusiasm, act. As we heard last week, Prabhupada said, just act even in the world around us. They say, if you want to be enthusiastic, they say, act enthusiastically. They don't know the goal of life, but even in the principles of the material, they say, you have to act enthusiastic. You'll become enthusiastic. Be enthusiastic. it breeds enthusiasm. Being in the association of enthusiasm breeds enthusiasm. Okay, well, I'm going to finish there and ask if there's any questions. We started about 20 minutes later. So, any questions? I don't know. Let's see if there's anything down there. We might carry on with this next week. Let's see how we feel. If anyone has any questions, you can chat them in or pass them over to somebody. In the meantime, we'll have a little enthusiastic kirtan. Hare Krishna, waiting for some questions there. Kirtan is really the essence of accommodating an environment, an atmosphere, as well as the presence of the Lord to evoke the natural. By the nature of the soul is enthusiastic, by the way. We come into this world very enthusiastic to try to imitate Krishna. And we get a little frustrated sometimes because it's not as easy as it sounds. Just like a kid, or just like we do, we get very enthusiastic in the beginning and then we lose our enthusiasm after a while because it's based on an impossible expectation that I'm going to become a pure devotee just by wearing tilak neck beads and doing a few mechanical things and playing a good part, and everyone should recognize that now I'm a pure devotee or something. Or now I'm going to become a sannyasi in 5 days. It's not quite like that. There's still a lot of subtle and gross anarthas in our heart which have to be rooted out, cleansed out. It takes time. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So Premanande, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Well, we've got a question. A question. How? This is from a wonderful devotee in Malaysia. And happy Ekadasi. Yes, there's a question also. What is our vrata on Ekadasi? More chanting. My question is how to maintain enthusiasm while performing book distribution. Thank you. Hare Krishna. That I assume means that you're engaged in book distribution, which is wonderful. So how to maintain that enthusiasm on book distribution? Well, everybody asks this question at various points of time and at various points of our devotional lives. We'll experience different. Krishna is there. Krishna has his hand in everything that is going on. And we all know, those who've actually had spent the time trying to distribute Prabhupada's books, especially in public, house to house or on the street or whatever, that you go through stages. And all of a sudden, somebody takes a book. Sometimes when we're not even trying. And how we feel elated. We feel good. And sometimes, many books. I was saying the other day, maybe, I can't remember if it was in the last class or not, I cannot remember. But when we started our book marathon here in France this year, on my first day out on the book distribution, we were in one city. And within 2 hours, or 2.5 hours maybe, 17 Bhagavad Gitas had gone out. And I thought, if I carry on like this for another 2.5 hours, I'll break my record. In France, but then 2.5 hours later, maybe another 2 books have gone out. Krishna has his plan. His plan is not that we just distribute books. His plan isn't that exactly. That may be a part of it, but that's not the real plan. Is that we develop our love for him, that we completely depend on Krishna. So the essential feature of Sankirtan is this dependence, depending, constantly praying and being in this mood of depending upon Krishna. We're not the only doer. We may be the doer in terms of willingness, little faith, desire, and so on. But ultimately, everything is Krishna's will. I'm trying to remember that. To remember we're instruments of Krishna's will. We're carrying Krishna to others. And it's the result or not the result. Prabhupada, we read it, maybe we didn't. In one letter, Srila Prabhupada wrote, early letter, he said, do not be disappointed. I wish I could have it here now. He's talking about book distribution. He said, do not be disappointed, even if nobody takes a book, even if nobody gives a donation. Do not be disappointed, he said. Krishna is looking at our endeavor. He's looking at the fact that we're trying to represent him, trying to serve him. It's easier said than done because we're not necessarily on that platform. But that's one thing. Try to remember, that we are instruments of Krishna. If Krishna wants, everything can happen this way or that way. But he's also preparing us to go back to Godhead. And if we base it upon results, of course, then maybe that's there in the beginning. We may be determined, enthusiastic Krishna will reciprocate. But sometimes when we're ready, he then brings us to that point where we have to depend on him. And this is the next stage of devotional service, is to become dependent upon Krishna, not dependent upon what I like, not depending upon the results, not depending upon the environment, etc., or even being with other devotees, but being dependent upon Krishna. So he does this sometimes, and we start feeling a bit morose. And then we realize, I just take shelter of Krishna. And how do we do that? Now, one nice thing is when we're feeling unenthusiastic, it's good to have association of another devotee. That often helps to pick up our spirits. We can help each other like that. Another good thing is to sit down and associate with a pure devotee. Read Prabhupada's books for some time. Just sit down and read. Take a break. You can do that also. It's a good thing before we go out to remember what it means to be doing Sankirtan. It's not just an activity, it's a state of consciousness also. Essentially, it's a state of our consciousness. And it's good to read verses which will inspire us in book distribution, for instance. There's some wonderful books available. What's that book? The Nectar of Book Distribution. What was that book? By Harry Kesh, what was it?
All Glories to Sankirtan.
All Glories to the Sankirtan Devotees, is that what it's called? A wonderful book. There's another one called The Nectar of Book Distribution. There's a wonderful book out by Vaisheshika, I highly recommend it, Our Family Business. Just to remember how much Prabhupada, it felt so indebted. He even said one time, I take the dust of those devotees who were going out and preaching like this, distributing books, and I place that dust on my head. So remembering Srila Prabhupada and the sacrifice he performed, walking the streets of Delhi when everyone's saying no time, no interest, no time. They were not interested. Prabhupada was going out alone in his old age in Delhi before he left for America, going from restaurant to restaurant, trying to sell his magazines and books. Many days would pass, nobody would take. Nobody. Remember Srila Prabhupada and the amazing sacrifice he did for us. So it's not, we don't compare ourselves with necessarily the past or what devotees are doing somewhere else. We just try our best. Try to learn from those who are perhaps more, let's say, experienced. I don't know if effective is the word because that's a personal thing, but more experienced and more focused in their Sankirtan. Try to learn from them. Get together, have Sangha for distributing discussing book distribution, how we can remain strong and enthusiastic, how we can help each other, different things like this. And even in New York, Prabhupada was going alone. We don't know. Prabhupada didn't give a record of every moment that he was there, what he was exactly doing, but we know he was going around trying to sell his books in shops in different places. And most of the time, there was no response, no positive response anyway. So, just imagine how much Prabhupada sacrificed, how he worked throughout the night to translate these books and comment on them. Night, in the day he's preaching, nighttime he's working on these books for our benefit, how valuable they are. And the more we imbibe the message of these books, the more we'll be enthusiastic to share them with others too. We're sharing Prabhupada's association with others. If we don't have it ourselves, of course, then it can just become an external affair or obligatory affair or something or another, but it's not an internal affair. This is our family business to share this knowledge of the Bhagavatam with every living entity. So please get hold of that book if you can, Our Family Business. It is by Sheshik Prabhu, whose life has been literally a living example of somebody who lives with Srila Prabhupada in his books. Prabhupada said he'll live forever for those who do this. He lives forever in his books. They shall utilize. So we utilize this opportunity to live with Prabhupada by reading his books and distributing his books, sharing the knowledge in his books, sharing it with others in various ways, etc. And this will help. Reciprocation, Krishna will give you the enthusiasm, unflinching enthusiasm. Thank you for that. And prayer, don't forget to pray. Yes, there's the verse. Somebody's popped it up because I put it out on the internet a few weeks ago. Ananda Vrindavan, thank you for putting that out. I put it on my newsletter. Don't be disappointed. You have worked sincerely the whole day. That is your credit. That's all. That's your credit. Krishna will see. Baba Grahi Janardan. Krishna wants to see how much you are spending your valuable life and energy for Krishna. That's all. Don't be disappointed that many men are not coming here or we are very poorly pushing on. Never mind. Whatever Krishna has given us, let us utilize it. Now here is a chance Krishna has given me. And there's another part to that where he says, even if nobody gives any donation, etc. Hare Krishna. Yeah, that's the one. Thank you for that. And there is another part to it, but maybe I took it from another part of the letter or something. But don't be disappointed. Just take this as an opportunity to take shelter of Krishna when we see ourselves getting weak or forgetting, the goal, keeping the goal in mind. Now, one of the most important things, I didn't really mention it sufficiently this week, but next week we will, is goals, setting goals. In the material world, enthusiasm comes, I'll just brief it, comes because people have a goal, an objective goal. And in spiritual life, enthusiasm, it grows tremendously when we keep our focus on the goal. But we'll be discussing goal next week. Today we're just discussing application or whatever, effects and so on and so forth. But next week, more goal. So yes, the goal, keeping our goal in mind is very important, especially when we're going out preaching. Book distribution perhaps is very difficult for most people. I don't think that the seasoned book distributors don't find it difficult. Every day when they start, there's what we call it, like some kind of trepidation in the heart. There's a kind of a nervousness. That first person you approach so many people no one takes, you want to say, and it's like a little, sometimes people insult you, different things. Malaysia is it's like, paradise in some ways. It's tropical paradise. It's not so bad. Generally, you don't get that. But in the West, oftentimes you meet with aggression, you meet with opposition, and almost invariably with rejection, etc., etc. Australia is not so bad, but in France is a good training ground. I think if you can distribute books in France, you could probably distribute books anywhere. At least you can feel more, let's say a little bit more enthusiastic, a little easier from the conditioned point of view anywhere else. So wherever you are, the principles are the same. I remember one devotee was distributing books here in France, a couple of years actually. He's in India now again. But I took him to England one time for book distribution and for a book distribution seminar by Vaisheshika. And on we went first day out on the street. I said, well, what do you think of it here? It's really good, isn't it? He said, no. I said, why not? You've done more books than you do in France. He said, no, it's not so good, he said. I said, why? He said, it's easier to surrender to Krishna in France than it is here. Because you have to. You have to be more surrendered, more dependent on Krishna. So that's the stage Krishna wants us to come to. And book distribution is a wonderful, let's say, a wonderful environment to help us to realize that, to take shelter more of Krishna and the holy name. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna. Do as you wish with me. Lord Chaitanya says it. High stage, but book distribution is a high stage. Believe me, this is a high stage of bhakti. We may not be on that stage and we fall, but it's a high stage of bhakti, preaching Krishna consciousness. Krishna says, no one is more dear to me than in this world, nor will there ever be one more dear. It's a very high stage of devotional service to distribute these books to others. So every devotee in this movement is very fortunate. Prabhupada has given us this chance to dance on a high stage, you could say. We may feel a bit uncomfortable sometimes, but take shelter as the director of the stage, and we'll be okay. Krishna and his pure devotee representatives, they'll give us the confidence to carry on. And that will be the next subject. Direct confidence. We have to have confidence, also patience and confidence in our devotional service, not just momentary enthusiasm, sustainable determination. And to be patient, determination and patience go together. They're like a combination of enthusiasm and patience means determination. And then like that, confidence that we will achieve the goal. And that requires association, hearing and chanting, etc. Okay, that's it. Hare Krishna, thank you all very much. Very short questions today. But hopefully there's some answers or some food for thought. And we will now sign off with another kirtan. Where's the kirtans? Haribol! Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama. Enthusiasm comes from the soul, ultimately from Krishna. So when we connect with Krishna, the more we remember and take shelter of him, and not just the effects of our service, but we're taking shelter of Krishna, whether the results, what it means in Gita, not disturbed with happiness and distress, success and failure. We're not disturbed because we're taking shelter of the undisturbed. We're taking shelter of Krishna, with the instrument through which Krishna's will comes. And when we take shelter of Krishna, just like if we take shelter of the sun, we'll feel warm. Take shelter of Krishna, we'll feel enthusiasm. Take shelter of the pure devotees, we can feel enthusiasm. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
The same thing in Kirtan, when we're chanting the holy names in our hearts. It's like you could say in one sense, embrace the holy name in our heart, but just take the holy name in our heart. It's like a hold the name in our heart. Also, fall down at the lotus feet of the holy name in our heart. Take shelter of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hear the holy name. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Gauranga, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Nityananda, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Jai Jai Nitai Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Prabhupada ki jai. Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai. Hari Nam Sankirtan ki jai. Hari Bo! Hari Bo! Hari Bo!
Sampada say Haribol.
Hare Krishna
Hari
Prabhu.
Bo!
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Hari Bo!
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you very much, Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev. Happy Ekadashi.
Jai Guru Maharaj. Say
Jai Guru Maharaj.
Jai
Jai
Gurudev.
Guru Maharaj. Jai Gurudev.